discussing that today. attain to the supreme goal. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai. The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body and the owner of the body, and the supersoul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verse 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, just as you all are doing right now. Haribo! And thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts the spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit. And that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. The symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the supersoul. The soul and the supersoul are two. The material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 material elements. One can see this constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul becomes, sorry, I misread that. And can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization. And one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Sri Bhakti Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namane Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Shri Tatmane Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutale Sri Bhakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatare Shatarine Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyana Jana Chalakaya Chakshor Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Quick question. When Srila Prabhupada says, a spiritual master by various instructions teaches his students to get free from the material concept of life. Can anybody, I just want to have a few people speak about what they think the material concept of life is. What do you think he means by that? What's that?
No regulation.
No regulation? Okay. What else? Yes. False identification with material body.
Satisfying only bodily needs.
Satisfying only bodily needs. Okay. Anybody else?
Same thing, misappropriation.
Misappropriation. Okay, that's good. All good answers that I would say are kind of like symptoms of the material concept of life. But I feel like recently I've been looking at this a little bit differently. Before, when I was looking at this, I always thought materialistic concept of life was people that really care about, the bling bling and the the Gucci, the Prada, and things like this. But the more I get your association and the more I practice the process of devotional service, because it's a science, it actually changes the consciousness, the more I've been appreciating that what Srila Prabhupada has been saying with the materialistic concept of life is actually, it's a religious belief. It's a belief that we are no more than our brains, and that everything that has come about by chance. Maybe in some level of a multiverse, as they say now. They go, oh, we're nothing but matter, And because our consciousness doesn't really matter, they call it the hard problem of consciousness. It doesn't really matter, so we don't really know why it's actually needed. Therefore, it's probably just an illusion, and we can really bypass it. Anytime you're actually sensing anything, it's more of a hallucination, if anything. And so they're saying that everything else is just like a mechanism that is just kind of built together based off of the physical reality that we see. So what would the opposite of that be? The opposite of that paradigm would be what Krishna is talking about, saying that, no, actually, everything stems from consciousness. Every piece of information that the scientists gather right now to establish this materialistic concept of life, it's first has to be taken in and then processed with the brain, which is linked to the mind. It's the mind that's processing things, and then you're seeing that picture, right? So even if they're gonna say, oh, I can see the speed of light is this, or I can see gravity is this fast, how are you actually processing? It's the mind that's taking that data and then presenting it to you. You're not actually having exact direct contact with reality. It's all being processed. And what's witnessing that process? You are witnessing that process. Even right now, as you're hearing my voice, it's traveling through, and it's going to your ear, and then your mind, via the brain, is processing this information. Why is it needed? And so Krishna is saying, Srila Prabhupada is saying, understand these 24 elements, because everything that we're experiencing is coming from consciousness. It is the Kshetra, the battle of Kurukshetra. And so some people are saying, oh, okay, well, did this actually happen 5,000 years ago? To me, that's not the question. It's how is it occurring in your life right now? That is the question that we all should be asking. How is Krishna and Arjuna's story manifesting in our life right now? Because we all have our battle of Kurukshetra to deal with. And our card will get called sooner or later, and we'll have to make that life-changing decision. And for devotees, that life-changing decision is every moment. It's thinking about Krishna. It's thinking about the absolute truth. But into our actual practical day-to-day life, we all have this battle going on. How are we actually going to present the knowledge that we have in the proper way? And we can't do it when we have the conception of, hey, I am just this physical reality. And because we've all been in this society for so long, we all abide by that to a certain extent. We've all been colonized, as I would like to say, mentally by a fight that happened in Europe, between, the Christians and the scientists at that point. And we're dealing with those ramifications. If there wasn't a break between science and religion, we would have a much more holistic approach, because now there's many scientists that are coming forward and saying, guys, this definitely has all been caused by consciousness. The fact that we have consciousness shows that the universe has consciousness. I was watching this one eye surgeon, and he was talking about how technical the eye is. And the guy said, okay, well, look at this Lamborghini outside. What's more complicated? The human eye, which I just found out actually breathes. I didn't even know the eye breathes, but I found that out. The human eye or Lamborghini? And the surgeon said, by far the human eye. And then he said, okay, well, is there any chance that a Lamborghini would somehow just crash together and form a Lamborghini out of just chance? It's like, no, that's completely absurd. However, that's the common materialistic paradigm that's being taught right now. When you actually break down the philosophy of materialism, because there's, just like we have a sampradaya coming from Prabhupada going to Bhakti, they have their own sampradaya. And they are by far the most dominant philosophy, and it's spooky when you actually start thinking about, okay, what are they actually saying is the point of all of existence? Because that's what it is. They start with, okay, we're just going to analyze the physical elements, and then they start going off in the spooky la-la land. But most people don't ever get to the point where they're talking about the spooky la la land. They just say, oh, okay, well, because they can describe so many things in the material aspects and they have great inventions, that it must mean that they know what they're talking about. However, we can see where is society going right now. We're on the brink of World War III. There's a book called The Anxious Generation. This generation that's coming up is going to be the first generation in modern society that's going to live shorter than their parents. We're poisoning ourselves with the food supply, with the air supply. It's causing so many destructive elements. They're saying that suicide and mental depression in the younger generation, the generation that should be the most hopeful, they have no aches and pains in their bodies. They have no bills. They have none of this stuff. And they're the most suicidal and most depressed. Why? A big part of they're saying is because they're losing the Sangha. You know, the association, the algorithms are taking over much of society. And it's actually affecting the gray matter in the brains, especially with young kids. The social media is destroying young girls, keeping what they think should be the ideal so warped that they feel as though they should get certain things in life just because people are pinging them in their DMs on a constant basis. Guys with video games and other websites destroying their brains, right? To a degree that they're saying that people don't really know the ramifications of how society is actually going to function past it. It's like we've let a brand new virus spread throughout the whole globe, and we don't know what the ramifications are yet. So we'll see. But what Krishna is saying is, whether you're talking about from a global perspective or an individual perspective, it is so important to understand that consciousness comes first, and your whole existence is predicated on that. And so what we're going to do is discuss a little bit more about those 24 elements. So I put a couple of little slides together. And the first one I have is of a dear friend. Hold on, view. So this is my good friend Krishangi Mataji, who passed away in October. This was a week before she passed. And she sent me on an adventure to do some book distribution to a rapper, this guy named Ishmael from the Diggable Planets. And I would always tell her that, hey, he named his group the Diggable Planets. Well, Srimad Bhagavatam says all sound vibration comes from the Dig Devatas. Now, people will say, oh my gosh, are you a Hindu? Don't you guys have 330 million gods? But what they don't understand is the devas that we're referring to are devas that we're experiencing every single day. Every single day. With our five senses, Srimad Bhagavatam says, those are the devas. Those are the demigods that are controlling our reality. Sometimes people say, oh, okay, well, if I practice this religion, okay, after you die, you may go there. If you do this, you may go there. You practice that, you may go there after you die. That's not this. This is more like a martial arts. If you practice it, you will see the results, no matter your belief. Because we're dealing with a real science that's talking about consciousness and how you alter reality based off of what you are focusing on. So the question is, how do we present this in a way that modern society, with the algorithms that are adjusting everybody's perspective, sending people into different rat holes based off of whatever their beliefs, whatever their likings are, they're getting stronger and stronger. AI is getting stronger and stronger. So people are going to have less and less faculty to actually think for themselves. And I think we can all see from the last 4 years in human history in general that most people are sheep by nature. You know, they get one strong person in command, and people just kind of blindly follow for the most part. And then they get stuck in this rat race of, hey, well, my father worked 9 to 5 his whole life and did this and did that and did this, so I'm going to do it. And my friends are doing the same thing, and so I'm just going to keep on going. But I bring this picture up for this conversation is because Krishna says those who understand this science, understand the difference between the Kshetra, which is our field of activity. The Battle of Kurukshetra Right now, what you're seeing is the Kshetra. What you're experiencing internal and external, that is the field of experience that you are battling on right now. And so I have it later, but there's a verse from 8 through 12 which describes the qualities that lead to liberation, such as humility, such as charity, such as serving a person who has seen the absolute truth. And one of them was, Srila Prabhupada translated it, was seeing the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease as one of the qualities that are beneficial to liberation. And so she was dying, she knew she was dying. And at one point she goes, Palaka, because we talk about hip hop, we'll just talk about society, and also I was thinking, wow, I don't know if I'm going to see her. I thought she had more time than a week, but I thought she had a few months maybe. I didn't know it was going to be the last time I spoke to her. And she goes, Palaka, why don't they teach us in school? And I'm like, why don't they teach us what? She was like, I just don't understand. Why don't they teach us in school? She was like, the 4 major problems of life. And I'm like, what's that? She goes, birth, death, old age, and disease. So here's a young boy, about my kid's age right there. And this picture represents the various bodies that people are forced into. Nobody wants to get old. However, you're forced to do it. So people have to ask, why am I here? If I'm a conscious person, am I a conscious being? How did I just appear here to begin with at all in any way, shape, or form? Is there a meaning that we can find from this? We have to ask, this is a forced situation. And Krishna is saying, it doesn't have to be this way. But there is a system, there's a science to this. There was recently, Terrence Howard was on the Joe Rogan show, and he started talking about his theory of the universe. Did anybody see that? Anybody hear that? Anybody know Joe Rogan? I know you guys may not be, got a mixed crowd in here. But so this guy named Terrence Howard, he was a very famous actor. He started getting into various scientific theories. And he came up with some pretty wild ideas, borrowed from other areas, and people were saying, wow, if what he was saying is true, it's amazing, but how do we verify it? And then other scientists were chiming in like, oh, he's a hoax, he's this, he's whatever, it's all garbage. And I was listening to him and I was just like, looking at it, how do I know? I don't know, I'm not a scientist. So all I did was say, hey, let me compare what he's saying to those who have seen the truth. And so I started looking at Srimad Bhagavatam and saying, oh, this aligns to Srimad Bhagavatam, not that so much. This does, that does, this does, and just kind of looking at that. One thing that he was saying is the whole world is actually operated based off of love. That's very close to what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. So I was like, oh, that's cool. The other stuff, don't know about, looked interesting. But it caused a debate within the scientific communities where they actually had him back with the actual scientists, and the scientist was like, hey, you're actually pretty accurate here. Some areas are very far off. But it's like the blind leading the blind, because if they're saying they have these theories, what good are these theories for human society when people are dying every day? I was seeing this article, not seeing this news report, where a guy was on the beach with his wife, and a storm was coming. And it was in New Jersey, and people were swimming and saying, "Oh, it's summertime. It's cool. We can cool off." Try to find some relief from the heat. Storm was coming, and so he was like, "Hey, we got to get out of here." So the wife and him were leaving, and then he sees the kids were still on the beach. What does he do? Does he leave? It's high risk at that point. And so he was like, you know what? I'm going to do the courageous thing. I'm going to go tell them what to do. Tell them to get out. And the wife said, no, don't do it. That's, mind your business. He was just like, I got this. He walks back to the beach and gets electrocuted. Right then and there, boom, trying to help somebody else. They couldn't get the ambulance, they couldn't get, in time to save him, right? 45 minutes, no oxygen, anything. And so we can keep on theorizing for lifetime after lifetime, right? We see it's been going on for centuries. But do you have that much time? Do I have that much time? I don't know. I know I don't, right? And so Srimad Bhagavatam is saying, look at how the most ideal person, ideal king, saying that he was the last king of the earth, Maharaj Parikshit, the most ideal king. Can we understand what that is, truly, 5,000 years ago? No, but we can understand what's ideal or what's more ideal, and that's important. And we should guide ourselves in the same way that we see various hatha yoga stretches, right? We see people trying to get the body in shape, trying to stretch, push it to the limits. That's one portion. There's a bigger portion that we'll talk about in a second called your buddhi, your buddhi, the intelligence, what Buddha, made so famous globally. It's the intelligence, which is what Srimad Bhagavatam says is a factor of 10 times as you start going through these elements. It gets more subtle, however, it gets stronger. It gets stronger as you go towards that level. And so we have to look at what's in common with all these experiences and analyze them from the viewpoint of intelligence, but don't just give your intelligence to scientists that don't know left from right. Give it to those who have actually practiced it and achieved perfection. It's like life is like a password where you can go on all day trying to figure out the password. However, there's a time limit. And there's people that said, hey, I got the password. I have the password. Lord Jagannath, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada, they're saying, we have the password. And there's a process for it. And so we should try to stretch our intelligence with the guidance of Shastra, Sadhu, and Guru. And magnificent things will happen. So, this is the modernized, personalized battle of Kurukshetra. Everybody has office jobs. Most of society are wage slaves at this point. Changed from about 100 years ago, everybody was, it was an agricultural-based society. Even in America, maybe like 120, 150 years ago, most Americans had a homestead, and they were farming for themselves and were living off the land. And then they said, hey, no, industrialization, you know what happened there. And so now a lot of people are in the office. How does a battlefield apply to this? It seems so disconnected. So disconnected. But once we understand that the process of human life is to use our intelligence, then we see, okay, if our eyes, actually, I did a little video. So it basically walks through the unification of reality. Brahman, the big one, right? Aham Brahmasmi. And so it's saying it's all one. However, the absolute truth breaks out into various functions and personalities. And this physical realm is on autopilot. Again, artificial intelligence is already here. And Krishna is saying, matter of fact, if you're in your human form of life, and you aren't asking, why am I here? How am I here? And how can I escape this repeated cycle of birth and death? Then you are also a part of the artificial intelligence that's on autopilot. And you can stay within that artificial intelligence for time immemorial. It's on autopilot. It's not gonna, we're almost in a situation where we're renting apartments. These bodies, which include the mind, intelligence, and ego, we are based off our actions, our thoughts, our reflections, and our judgments at every moment are creating a new apartment for us based off of how we're treating the current apartment. We're renting. We're going to get kicked out sooner or later. However, the ultimate reality is the holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. So this is just like a real quick walkthrough. So right here, holy name of Sri Hari is surely all that be. But how do we discuss the variety? So, pause. So right here, we can see that there's two categories that the intelligence can pick out. We can say that there's things that are temporary and things that are eternal. Eternal. Temporary. So two categories, temporary and eternal. Now, Sanskrit, they'll call it prakriti, right? Purusha, the soul, is there. But again, we don't need it. We can put the Sanskrit, but sometimes that can confuse them. But just going right there, temporary, eternal. Sorry, what's that? What is the difference? Temporary is something that goes from unmanifested to manifested back to unmanifested. So right now, Ram Roy is paying obeisances. Now he's not. Haribo! It's temporary. It's temporary. What's that? Internal? Yes, the absolute truth. It's that eternal part. Yes. And so it says that when the supreme consciousness glances at Prakriti, there's an external and internal there also, but we may or may not get there today. Then that causes a stir in the environment. It causes a fluctuation. It makes those modes, those temporary modes, creation, maintenance, destruction, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, wake up in their temporary forms. Now we understand that there's goodness, passion, ignorance, right? So there's the great overall shadow, material energy, that which is what to do, why to do it, the morals. But then it says sattva, goodness. Why does sattva come first? Well, because it's the closest to Lord Vishnu, the closest to the absolute truth. But it's still in this diagram right here, oh, you can't see it. This diagram right here is saying sattva is a part of the temporary. Why? Because even if Lord Vishnu manifests in some level of health or maintenance of happiness and knowledge, it's still going to disappear at a certain point. So it's not pure, but we'll get to that later. But from there, the ego is formed. Now, the ego is that which gives us our sense of us, our usness. Like, hey, this is mine. I'm in my body, my mind, my family, my race, my temple, my this, my that. Again, there's a whole philosophy around intersectionalism right now where people are saying, keep on dividing society, keep on dividing society, keep on dividing society. You can do that with your intelligence. It's not recommended though. And so the ego then divides into three different forms based off of creation, maintenance, destruction, or sattva, rajas, tamas. From there, from sattva, the mind is created. Now the mind is the interface for our five senses and our intelligence. Even the animals have the mind. And so it's what helps us to relate in this eventually physical world, but we're not there. These are all subtle. You can't see these with your human senses, but you can understand them with your intelligence. In the same way, we can't see infinity, we can't see eternity, but we can understand the concept, right? Because what it does is it takes the many and brings it down to a smaller amount. So then from Raja, passion, intelligence is created. Why? Because you got to say, you need intelligence to say, I can understand the temporary and eternal. How is that happening? That's via your intelligence. Do I need to, fight or flight, all those things. But then, this is where the devas come into place. Because if we're going to interface with this external world, just like the Matrix, then we need something that's going to give us a sense of hearing. This, when I'm hitting that, this is the physical, that we'll get to that in a second, then it's traveling through, and then something's allowing me to hear. I can't see it. You can't see it, but I'm experiencing it. So if we all close our eyes and think about our favorite song when we're a kid, there's gonna be 100, 300 different songs playing. And the scientists will say, I don't believe it, that's not true because I can't measure it, I can't see it, yada, yada, yada. No, you all know it's very true. You are experiencing it. Why? Because that's happening within your consciousness. And so there's the devas that Srimad Bhagavatam talks about that we're all experiencing right now, and they say they are controllers of our reality. So we have our sense of hearing. And one thing to understand is we have two bodies. Right now we're talking about the subtle body, the body that you cannot see, but you're experiencing at every moment. Yes, yes, yes. And this is why hearing is so important. You can hear these transcendental sounds first. So you have the controller of hearing, the sense of taste, sight, taste, and then smell. All of these you can experience. You can remember 5 senses. And so these are the devas. These are the demigods that Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about. Processing this reality. If we don't have that, then we're in trouble, right? But that evolves. It's an evolutionary process. You see, it's coming from the one and it's evolving. Why? It's evolving due to our sense desires. Our desires to want to enjoy that which is not ours. Then from there, we have our actions. What do we do in this life? We can speak, we can grasp, we can move, procreate, and eliminate. Now, all these are in the subtle body. These are all activities. As a matter of fact, our subtle body actually has way more abilities than our physical body. So right now, if you want to say, hey, I want to go to Manhattan, we can all close our eyes and envision ourselves in Manhattan. The subtle body, the mind has that ability. What limits us from doing that? What limits us from teleporting from here to there? Our physical body. But our subtle body has all of the elements, all of the capabilities of our physical body. And that's how we're developing our character. I just went to Legoland recently, and they're showing how all the different characters get created, right? They have little old and all these type of characters. And so the Gita's saying, as you are dealing with your Kurukshetra internally and then affecting the external, you are building your next character. And this process is happening right now. Again, reincarnation is happening every single time you move. Not just physically, but subtly. Reincarnation is occurring. It is a different body, and you're choosing the mode that you're in. And you see the results. So then once it gets through Raja, then Tama. Now Tama's the most distressing of the modes. It's known for being bewilderment, inertia, but from there evolves sound, the sense of sound, the sense of touch, the sense of taste, and the sense of smell. Now somebody was saying, hey, is that internal or external? Notice what we're talking about. We have our subtle body, our mind, intelligence, ego, which is our subtle body. Most scientists, they can barely agree to the mind, but we are all experience the mind, intelligence, ego. So when they try to say it's not true, it's like, okay, easy, buddy, you know. But it's an internal, external. So even with now we're talking about the physical forms that we can actually analyze and that scientists are analyzing. We have sound, that's the internal form, and then space is the external form. Then we have touch. Touch is the internal form. Air is the external form. Then being able to see forms, fire is the external form. So it's the internal, external. It's coming from something. This is the evolutionary process. So when Darwin is seeing an evolutionary change, it's because there's a conscious evolutionary process that is occurring. So when we're looking around, right now, we can analyze it. These actually have all the quality of the one before it. So with sound, you can hear it, right? You can hear it, but you can hear it internally first, right? When you're playing your favorite song, you hear it. Now with touch, with air, if you have your eyes closed and hear air going by your ear, even with your eyes closed, you can hear it, but then you can also feel it. So it's evolved. It has the same as air, but something more. Fire has the same as the previous two, but something more. So you can, with your eyes closed, you can hear it, you can feel it, and now you can see it. You can see the forms. Taste, same as before, but now you have the water. Same as before. And think about fire. Let's go back to fire. Think about fire. Every moment that your consciousness is seeing it, it's changing form. It's almost like air that you can't see. It's constantly changing. It's dancing all the time. And then water is, you can see it. It's more stable. If you don't tap it, it will stay still. And then earth providing smell. And so this is the matrix Bhagavatam is saying. We just went over all the 24 elements that Srila Prabhupada was talking about in this. Now he just mentions, hey, understand the 24 elements and chant Hare Krishna. But no, this is literally describing the matrix. And it's saying that everyone from earth to water and going back, it gets 10 times stronger, all the way down to the ego. So it's stronger, but it's more subtle, right? Because when we're talking about a subtle body, only we are experiencing it. So intelligence is what we're supposed to be using when we're looking at life in general. So when we're seeing this, one great blessing that we have is saying, how can we move towards that process of liberation? And it's being able to look at our normal reality. Because for me, I don't live in a temple. So I have to figure out ways of remembering Krishna when I'm not in front of the deities. And this is my environment most of the time, something to this extent. But every once in a while, you can start thinking about that process and saying, hey, what am I seeing? How do I know it's true? How do I know it's real? What is that evolutionary process? And for those who kind of understand some technology, we can look at this universe very similar to a server where they have the operating system, the application. All the elements that are making up our body on the right, think about this as like the universal form. Fire, which is heat in our body. We got to keep it at 98.6 degrees. Water, it's in the ocean, but it's also 70% of our body. We can break down all those 5 elements into our physical body. Is it ours? Or are we simply borrowing it from the universe? And that includes the subtle body. So our mind, intelligence, and ego, we are borrowing just like the water, just like the air. But we think it's ours. And so we're thinking that all these different individual machines are oh, this is me. No, it's not. None of that is you. and Srimad Bhagavatam says that the ego is Lord Shiva. And this material world, the physical world, is made out of ignorance. He represents that, but he's helping everybody get through. And if you look at the 3 modes, who represents all the 3 modes at once? Because we have Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. When you look at Mother Nature, so Mother Nature, past, present, and future, it's Durga. That's Durga. It's Lord Shiva's consort. So in one sense, we can, as we're looking at each other, we say, wow, this is all, I'm seeing Lord Shiva everywhere right now, right? And the different manifestations. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam says, we can look at all these various points, But in the same way that math works, in the same way that language works, when we see a chair, we know chair encapsulates all of the chairs in existence, past, present, and future, in any circumstances. All gets consolidated down into one symbol called chair. That's what language is. It's because it's the facility of intelligence, shabda. it's what we can actually grasp. But it's not supposed to be like the mind who's saying, oh, I want this ice cream. I want this song played. I want that girl. I want this. No. Taking all these data points. It's saying, consolidate it. Consolidate the mind is very all over the place, the 5 horses. See 3 things. Well, first see 24 things. Take the whole universe and you can summarize it into 24 things. Why 24? Because the mind, the intelligence can grasp that. And then you can boil down those 24 things into 3 things. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. I've never seen Brahma, I've never seen Vishnu, I've never seen Shiva. I don't know if I believe what you're talking about. Okay, well think about your happiest time of your life, your saddest time of your life, your 6 major categories of experience that you think about on a day-to-day basis. Were they created? Were they maintained for a little bit? Was it destroyed? Then you are familiar with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. You may not want to call them that. That's your choice. It doesn't change the reality. And so then from there, the intelligence, Krishna saying, okay, what we're seeing here is you can consolidate them, all 24 elements, into what? Durga, and that which is powering the whole universe, the soul of the universe, Brahman, or Vishnu, as Paramatma, in everyone's heart. Hold on, what? Paramatma? You're talking about consciousness, but now you're talking about a super consciousness. No. So we went through all of reality with these 8 modes, talking about the 24 elements. That was the diagram in that video. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we're not our ego, then we are that which is witnessing everything, and we're making our moral judgments on what is supposed to be done. But then we have to ask ourselves, how do we know a Paramatma actually exists? How do I know I'm not Paramatma? How do I know that? But then you have to ask yourself, did you predict when you were born? Did you create that? Your first memory, were you responsible for that? Every night when you go to sleep, is that your choice, or is there somebody else that's doing that? And then waking you up, and then gonna exit you out of here. So the Gita says, your field of activities, the Kshetra, you are the witness, but there is another witness. And our consciousness is witnessing it, but then there is a super consciousness that's witnessing all activities. So I know my activities, you know your activities, but there's another consciousness that knows all activities. And so as we are, Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda. And so as we are going through our day-to-day, we can use this process of saying, oh, it's just Prakriti and Paramatma, and ultimately, it's all just various names for the holy names of Sri Hari. And thus, this is a tool that we should all take advantage of to help purify ourselves on our path of liberation, because then no matter what we're seeing, the filter through our intelligence allows us to be conscious of Krishna, Paramatma, and these teachings at all times. And you will see a definitive difference in your life as you do this. I thank everybody for their time. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you. Oh. Oh, can you come a little closer? I can't. Hare Krishna. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for coming. When you,
If I'm listening to music, right, and I want to chant the holy mantra, I like to sing the holy mantra.
Yeah.
So if I catch a beat to my game, I can sing all of it.
hey, whatever you need to keep on chanting, just chant. But yeah, I would say ultimately you want to dovetail even the original music that you're listening to and Krishnafy it. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question.
There's Palaka from Tea.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for staying. Thank you.
Love you all your points.
Oh, good, man.